Shameless.
United in the Europa League, Europa League.
Manchester United 1, Omonia 0. We got there in the end. Man. And you know what? It looked like it was going to be one of them evenings where, you know what was it? 33 shots. At one point before we scored, it was 30 shots at goal and 10 on target and no goal. The Omonia keeper played his heart out. Obviously, a Manchester United fan, he was absolutely buzzing. We spoke to him afterwards, and he had the game of his life. And it just looked like we were just never going to score. It had one of those feels to it. And just thinking, we already know that we need to win every game and get to Sociedad and beat them away in Spain for us to be able to win this group. It's looking that way anyway, even with this win. And then if we would have drawn today, that would have been a really, really big kick in the teeth in terms of having to play those Champions League teams that are going to drop down into Europa League. And it just had that feeling. Look, under Erik ten Hag, when we're trying to build and we're trying to evolve as a team and progress as a team, we're going to get that. We know that. That's no problem. And I think the big positives is that we're creating a shed load of chances, a lorry load of chances, which, you know, when the forwards don't score and don't, you know, finish their dinner, it's not on Ten Hag, it's not on the defenders, it's not on the midfielders, that's on the attackers, that's on the forwards, that's on the strikers who need to put the ball in the back of the net. And they just didn't do that today. I mean, Marcus Rashford was so lively. The positives, and it's weird because there's positives and negatives in this type of performance, because he was at it, he was doing everything right, you know, taking on shots, taking on players, getting into good position, you know, clean through on goal. He put it wide. I thought it was a goal kick, and they even gave a corner, but he just couldn't hit the back of the net. And Ten Hag said afterwards that, you know, it's kind of a good thing because, you know, it proves that we keep going. It proves that we don't stop. Little bit of Ten Hag time, you know, taking it out of the Fergie era, the old school Fergie time. We kept going, even when it felt like we weren't going to do it. And look, you can say, you know, we should be dispatching of, you know, Omonia with ease. That game should have been probably 4 or 5-0. Just like the first leg should have been 3 or 4-0 before we conceded before half time. And in these types of games, against these type of teams who are just hanging in there and waiting for a little counter attack or for you to make a mistake and waiting to pounce, these are the sorts of games that are banana skins, and that's why, you know, and we're not at the level yet where we can just easily just dispatch with teams. And this is another reason why, for me, we can clearly see why Erik ten Hag is picking massively strong teams every time. You know, a lot of times, you know, we're saying, oh, can we see Garnacho? I just want to see Zidane Iqbal for a little bit and things like that. It's just not going to happen, and it's not great. It's not great. You know, we'd love to be in a position where we've won 4 out of 4 games, and qualification is all but it's absolutely set. So the last game we can play some of the kids, but it's just not going to happen. And I think in Ten Hag's first season, where he's really trying to get his number 1 starting team fit and firing, and getting it cohesive and making us be able to dominate teams and play in the right way, whilst he's trying to fine tune that, I don't think he's got a lot of time to experiment, because also we need to balance getting results. We saw what happened last week in Cyprus. You know, we had to bring off Marcus Rashford off the bench and Luke Shaw off the bench to get the result after Jadon Sancho and Malacia weren't very good. And today, it was kind of a similar theme. Not as bad in terms of individuals, because we made more chances and we're probably even more dominant. We're probably just as dominant than last week, but we made more chances today. But again, those question marks arose where it's like, well, this is why almost the best team needs to be out there today. Casemiro, again, I thought it was interesting that Casemiro played, because Scott McTominay can't play on the weekend against Newcastle because he's got that yellow card. So you're thinking he probably would have got 90 minutes in his legs today, but came on in the last 10 minutes for Casemiro and gets the winning goal after hitting one into Rosed, and the whole of, you know, Old Trafford just sighed, and a lot of people were leaving. And then it got into obviously the 5 minutes of extra time, and he does well to get the goal. I asked Erik ten Hag about this in the presser about Jadon Sancho, and we've been talking about here on the channel, and all you guys have as well, about how do we unlock him, how do we get the best out of him. You know, the 3 goals that he scored this season have been from good link-up play, him, you know, exchanging passes with other players, him coming from outside to in and finding himself in a central area. And today was a little bit more of a different side to his game that we want to see. We want to see him kind of taking on players and beating players. Now, I'm not going to say he took on 2 players and he beat them and he absolutely got past them and laid it back, but he was positive in the moment and didn't take the safe option. Could have just set back to Luke Shaw. Could have just took the safe option to keep the ball turning. But he took a chance. He took a risk. And that was what's kind of been missing from him. And actually, even when he came on, there was still a little bit of that. He was patient, but there wasn't that kind of clinical cutting edge for him to try and take players on and make something happen. And the final ball certainly wasn't there as well. So for him to do that in the dying moments of the game was positive. That's more what we want to see. And Erik ten Hag spoke about him needing to link up with players and needing overlaps. And I said this, I tweeted this probably a couple of weeks ago. I said playing with inverted wingers is absolutely fine. It's not a problem. Even playing with wingers who are not as direct as, say, Martinelli or Heung-min Son or Diaz or Saka and these types of wingers who are really direct and get at people. Not playing with those type of wingers is absolutely fine. But you need to have a certain style of play to accommodate those players, like how Manchester City did. If you look at Riyad Mahrez, he's not super direct. He doesn't take players and twist them inside out. You look at Jack Grealish on the other side, he doesn't do that. You look at Phil Foden, a little bit more can take on players, but you get my drift. They rely on overlaps. They rely on overloads in wide areas and setting players in so that you can get good crossing opportunities or be able to bounce passes off each other instead. And that limits the reliance and the need to rely on somebody just trying to beat a man. Give the ball to someone, run, go at them. If we don't possess that, that's fine, but the style needs to change. And we're slowly doing that, and Ten Hag touched on that. So that was a positive. Casemiro was a positive as well, especially in the first half. I thought he was dominant. I thought he was good. I thought he was decent on the ball. Won the ball back really quickly, won all his aerial duels, nearly scored as well. He's actually quite more of a goal threat than I remember him being at Real Madrid. I don't know if that's something that Erik ten Hag's told him to do. I don't know if it's something that, look, against a side like Omonia, who was sitting back, there's more chances for him. But he did the same against Everton with that header from sort of 5-6 yards when he come flying in third man run and should have scored then as well. So that's a good trait for him to have. But he was speaking in the programme notes that his job is to protect the back four, defend properly and distribute the ball well. That's his job. And then he'll go from there. He said goals are bonuses. And he played well today. And it's interesting that Scott McTominay didn't start because, I think that's a sign that, because he can't even play against Newcastle, but that's a sign that, Casemiro is starting to bed in and probably I think he will start here against Newcastle. Well, now we know McTominay can't play anyway. He'll definitely start. Bruno's an interesting one. I saw a lot of people talking about it online and even in the stadium as well. And it's like, I wish I would have probably had a little bit more time to speak to Erik ten Hag. I wanted to ask him about this, because we know he wants to go for the glamour ball. He wants to go for the killer ball, the final glamorous pass, And, 8 times out of 10, the pass probably won't work. But the 2 times it does work, there's an assist or there's a build up to a goal, There's a goal involvement. And today, there's a few huffs and puffs from Bruno. People sort of saying, get Eriksen on, take Bruno off, he won't give away the ball as much. And I understand that criticism, I do. But I just think it's going to be a figure of his game, But that it is what it is. And at the end of the day, we just had to win this game. We can nitpick, but I think if we would have drawn this game, clearly it would have been a different feeling. But I think to win the game like we did in the last minute is obviously a positive because we had to get the 3 points. But if we break it down, there was a couple of nervy moments where we made a few mistakes. When their Bruno was through, the Omonia Bruno was through, and Neil Lennon spoke about it in the press. All he had to do was square the ball and was in big trouble. So that was probably the one nervy moment. But other than that, we were massively in control of the match, made a hell of a lot of chances, and didn't really manage to take them until right up to the end. But we're doing things in the right way. You can see what we're doing. We're creating chances. We're being imaginative and we're being patient. We're playing in the same way, and that's the biggest thing. We're not going to win every game. And we're certainly not going to win every game by a shed load of goals, but I want to see a style. And I'm starting to see it. The performance levels will do this. But I can take that in the first season whilst we build. But again, all about the big one now. All about the big one on Sunday. I think it's 5th versus 6th. You saw what Newcastle did when they went away to Liverpool, gave them a right old game. You saw what they did when they was at home to Man City. I've spoken to a few Newcastle fans. They are right up for it. They're Bruno. You could argue he's probably playing better than our Bruno right now, and Bruno Guimaraes. He's contributing with goals and playing really well, getting assists. So it's going to be a really tough game. St. Maximum, I don't even know if he's fit, but Diogo Dalot is actually looking a little bit leggy as well. He's looking a bit tired, not looking as fresh, and rightly so because he's been playing so many games. So it's going to be a really, really difficult game, and obviously we'll get into it as the days come past, as we get closer to that game. But massive 3 points for us tonight. Get in there, and Sharif, take care of business next week here, week after next, and then obviously that'll probably line up a massive game out there in Spain against Sociedad, where we're going to probably have to win that game to make sure we top the group. I'm out of here. My man of the match, difficult because everyone was so wasteful. I'm going to give it to Casemiro. I think he's starting to assert himself. I think he's growing in confidence. And just so I can prove that I don't have a Casemiro agenda and all of that stuff. Casemiro, man of the match. I'm out of here. Peace.